Will Texas be the most watched college football team next year? So I'll give you guys some data here. In 2023, Texas only appeared in one of the top 10 games watched, which was kind of surprising to me. It was the Washington and Texas game. That was the only appearance Texas had. 2024, we had it versus Arizona State and Ohio State. You go all the way down to 11, just outside the top 10. You have Georgia and Texas, and also Georgia and Texas twice. So 4 times in the top 11 is pretty good. Definitely an improvement. And I think that's because of better competition in the SEC, also going into deeper in the playoffs, I guess, because of the 12th team. Overall, this kind of surprised me. 23, we were the 6th most watched team in general. Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, Colorado. That one surprised me a little bit. Georgia, number 5, Texas, 6. Last year, Texas was number 4, Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia. So, Gerald, do you think Texas can make up that gap? And just real quick, Texas's gap to make up, Georgia, on average, 5.97 million people watched last year. Texas, on average, 4.63 million. So, about 1.5 million difference right there.
That is a pretty wide gap. And that's no shade at, Texas, obviously, we're a Texas channel. I'm a Texas fan. But like, that's such a wide gap. It's hard to see Texas fully making that up. I think early in the season, I think there'll be a lot of eyes on Texas. Arch Manning is going to attract a lot of the sidewalk fans because of the name, because of the fanfare, because of all the things, right? And if that first game goes well for him, then I think those sidewalk fans will continue to watch. I also think there's going to be some hate watching happening from people for Texas, right? People that want to see Texas fail, people that want to see Arch Manning fail. And so I think there is going to be an increase. I don't know if they can, again, that 1.2 million people is a ton of eyeballs. And so I don't know necessarily if Texas can make that full jump, but I do see an increase on the viewership for Texas coming up simply because of, again, a good playoff run, a team that's getting a lot of national championship hype already. And then obviously you layer on top of that the Arch Manning of it all. And I see them having an increase. I don't know if they can make up the full gap, but I do see them kind of closing that gap for sure.
Yeah, I do think the gap will be pretty. I think Texas will jump into this top 3 for sure.
Okay.
If the top 3, Georgia 5.97 million, Bama 5.44. So there's half a million right there drop, which is kind of surprising to me. Then Ohio State, like 300,000 drop there to 5.16. I think Texas will average 5 million viewers this year. I'm pretty confident saying that because of that, the Arch Manning effect. 2 years ago, guys, Colorado was getting 4.6 million people to watch their games. They basically 2 years ago were getting the same as what Texas got last year. Think about that. Colorado was doing that. And that was because of the Deion effect, man. Yeah, Deion effect and Shadur Sanders effect. But then that fell off. They went back down 1.5 million just in 1 year. So, for 1 year, you see a 1.5 million drop off. I think Texas probably could gain anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million, maybe even 2 million if the Arch Manning effect is in full effect. It's going to be interesting because, like you said, early in the season, I think it is going to be a thing. But if Texas doesn't perform to standards and Arch Manning doesn't perform to standards, I don't think you're going to see that. That's why Colorado kind of fell off, because everyone was excited to watch them. Oh, they're going to do big things, do well. And they got less views when they were better than when they were worse because it was the first year. So if Arch Manning can capitalize and Texas is really good next year, we're talking 10-2, 11-1, 12-0, then I think Texas could be number 1 or number 2 most watched next year.
Yeah, and they're going to have a lot of televised games, and I think they'll have a lot of primetime games. I think having that post-Thanksgiving Black Friday spot to themselves will do a lot. There's not a ton on, so you'll get, again, more sidewalk fans in. It's a big rivalry game. ESPN will make a big deal out of it. So they're going to have a lot of opportunities to attract a lot of eyes. And so they're, again, I'm not saying anything shade other than like it's just such a wide stinking gap. It's hard for me to see them making that jump fully. That being said, I wouldn't be shocked if it did happen because they're going to have more televised games. They're starting it off with the marquee game of the week. They're going to have multiple games. Texas going to the Swamp is going to be a big thing, right? Texas going to Georgia after what happened last year is going to be a big thing. Again, obviously Texas A&M, Texas and OU. So there's a lot of games that will draw a lot of eyes. And so especially if some of those games are night or primetime games, there will be a big jump. It's just, again, that's such a wide gap for Texas to have to draw.
Yeah, I think another thing, obviously, that would help. This is common sense. The most to watch games the last 2 years have been the national championship games. If Texas makes the national championship, that's going to help a lot in this conversation. And it's also weird. I think this is actually more of a possibility. So, Michigan in 2023 were a part of the three highest televised games the whole year. But they were number 3 in viewership, which means total each game wasn't as high as Ohio State and Alabama's.
Mm.
I think Texas could be that. I think Texas could have 3 or 4 of the highest rated games like Ohio State, Florida, Texas A&M, SEC championship game, Georgia. But then I could see people not watching San Jose State, for example, Sam Houston. I don't think that's going to be as high, so the average could drop. So I could see them having, 3 of the top 5 highest watched games, but their average be down in the 3 to 4 range.
That I could definitely see that happening. And again, because I think that San Jose State and that San Houston game will probably be an ESPN Plus kind of situation. So get your trials or your logins ready for that. You got Texas Vandy is going to not draw. It was a fun game last year, but it wasn't really that big of a draw, right? You've got some of those in there. Texas Arkansas is a thing for us, but not really nationally, especially with where Arkansas is right now. So you have to balance that thing out.
No, I completely agree. And I think honestly, if Georgia and Texas are both, going full force and they're undefeated or one of them has one loss or they both have one loss, that could be the highest viewed game of the whole season in college football. Like in Athens, Arch Manning, it's probably going to be a night game where the Ohio State game isn't. I think that honestly has a good chance to end up number 1 in the regular season rankings. And I think the SEC championship game last year was actually number 1 prior to the playoffs. So it's definitely it's a rematch as well. So there's so many factors where I think that ends up being the most highly rated game of the regular season.
A lot of storylines for sure.
Let us know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Texas has a shot at that, or do they have more of a shot of being in the top 3 or 4 regular season games, or you don't think they have a shot at all? They're just going to be the same. I definitely think they're going to get a viewership bump. Dan the Diesel Freak says, how are you guys feeling about Ohio State versus Texas and Columbus? I feel good about it. I think Gerald feels good as well. Not as good as I do because I have money on it. I've been loud about it. I think Texas is going to win that game. What about you, Gerald?
Yeah, it is. I feel good about it. I think I'd feel better about it if it was like week 4 and not week 1, because I think especially along the offensive line with the young quarterback. But I said it last week with our kind of co-show with Garrison and those folks over at the Ohio State channel. I think Texas wall to wall, like when you look at returning production and returning players, I think Texas probably has the edge there. But Ohio State has what I am dubbing the 2 like blue shell players of the nation, right? And Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, right? Those 2 guys are guys that one play can change the whole perspective of the game. So like we saw it last year in the playoffs, right? Caleb Downs changed the entire complexion of that game through one play. So like those guys give me some anxiety, and maybe it's just PTSD from the playoffs and Caleb Downs ruining my afternoon. But that's the thing that worries me, is that they have those big play guys. Texas won't be able to put the lid on them as well as we saw last year in the playoffs. And you saw that against Georgia as well, where Texas was able to kind of put a lid on some of those receivers with the safety. So again, I feel good. I don't feel as good as Matthew, but I don't know if anybody feels as good as Matthew outside of the locker room, maybe. But I think Texas is in a good position. It'll be a fun game. And again, I think it's going to come down to a defensive struggle is really where it's going to be in my mind.
No, I think we both definitely agree on that. Lower scoring game. And, they have 2 of the top 5 guys in college football at the worst. I think Texas has 3 of the top 20. I think Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, and I think Arch Manning's going to work his way into that when the season comes along. So, 5 of the top 20 players in college football on the field at the same time, there's a lot of talent.
That ain't bad.